Second batch of talks in this afternoon, second batch in the second day. And we'll have Rodrigo telling us about his experience working as an open source, full-time contributor, professional. And can we have the slide? 503 days. So I suppose those working in HTTP servers would know that the 503 is a server-side kind of error, right? I don't know if that's related. Please, let's welcome Rodrigo.
Thank you, Tiago. Hello, everyone. For the next couple of minutes, I will be telling you about my experience working 503 days on open source full-time. And there's a big disclaimer that I think is very important, and that is this talk is not a technical talk, it's a subjective talk. And that's important for two reasons. The first is that I'm better with technical talks. I'm not saying I'm good, I'm just saying I'm better. So subjective talks and these kinds of talks for me present a bigger challenge. And also, I will be telling you about my personal experience and my opinions and the things that I have learned, and those only make sense within the context of my personal life. Yours might be similar. The things I will tell you might make sense, but they don't necessarily make sense, all right? And that's okay, there's nothing wrong with you, there's nothing wrong. There's plenty of things wrong with me, but not the subject of the talk, all right? So this is a very important disclaimer, and I thought this was something obvious. I didn't need to include such a disclaimer, but apparently there's this random person online that read, so there's a written version of this talk, and that person read through the written version and then remarked that these lessons feel very similar to the lessons learned working at a mid-sized company. And I was like, okay, maybe. I never worked at a mid-sized company, so I don't really know. But I changed the title of the talk. Now it's 503 days working full-time on open source, lessons that I learned, but that aren't necessarily unique to free and open source software, and that you might have learned or might still learn in other personal or professional contexts. So with that out of the way, the agenda for today. I will be grouping the lessons that I learned into 4 major categories. I will be talking about how I got a job in tech and how you can get a job through a similar process, non-standard process. I will be talking about managing your ego. I'll be telling you about how to make it easier to interact with users. And by the end, I will be telling you how I managed to work with a code base that didn't fit inside my brain completely. So these are the 4 main key points that I'll be going through. Are we good to start? Yeah, all right. So I'll wake you up when we get to the 2 most important things. So you can fall asleep now if you want. And when I get to the key takeaway for this talk, I will wake you up. So getting a tech job, there's plenty of ways of doing that, of doing it. I'm not saying the thing that I did is the only way, because clearly plenty of people have tech jobs and not everyone did the same thing that I did. So mileage may vary. But the key thing, the thing that I want to talk about and that I think is important is that everything that you do online acts as a banner for yourself. Everything you do online is free publicity. It can be good publicity or bad publicity, but it is publicity. So make the most of it, or at least try, so that the things that you do and show up online don't act against you. And more particularly, what I mean here, or the things that I'm actually referring to, can you see the red dot? You can't. Okay, so I will not be using it. The things that I'm talking about refer specifically to the work that I do online, teaching Python and sharing Python tips and being active on Twitter, writing on my blog. So those things that take up way too much time, you can ask my wife, those things, the investment, the time investment you put into those can actually pay off. It's not a given, right? It's not a given, but it can play an important role in favor of your own person. And one thing I want to say, and I want to link to this, and I hope you don't get me wrong, so let me finish my thoughts, and then you can draw your own conclusions, is that luck is not 100% random. So there is a part of luck that is random. But it's not all of it, right? It's not equally... Your chances of being lucky by being here today and by talking to people, they're different than what those chances would be if you stayed at home, if you didn't come to Pycon Portugal. Or those chances would be different if you went to a different conference, right? So the people you talk to, the things that you do, the contexts in which you put yourself willingly, they affect how likely you are to be lucky. There's still going to be a random part, and the random part blessed me, don't get that wrong, but I also did things that made it more likely that I would be lucky. And I created this slide before, but now I have a second data point. So this is about a job I had. Now I have a new one, which I got in a completely different way because I was lucky. All right? So I've reproduced my own results. So I'm either doing something right, or I just have dumb luck. I don't know. I like to think that I'm doing something right, and you can too, maybe, hopefully. So now let's go into my favorite part of the talk, which is managing your ego. I have the awareness, I'm aware that when I was a younger kid, I was way too arrogant, and I was essentially a pain in that part of the body that you know. And I don't know, well, I'm not going to say that word just in case. So I was way too confident, and that affected the way I related to people, and I think I'm better now. But I still have a pretty big ego, or I think of myself quite highly. And part of that is healthy, and part of that might not be a good idea if I don't know how to manage that and how to interact with people, right? And so why am I talking about this, and why is this relevant? Because when I joined this company, I knew, and this is factual, for the first time in my life, I was not going to be the best Python developer in the room. Because in the previous rooms I was at, I was the only Python developer. So by definition, I was the best one. But this time, I was not going to be alone, and I was not going to be the best one. And I knew beforehand that I would need to take this opportunity, because if you're surrounded by people who are better than you, and if you can live with that, and if you can make the most of that, you can learn a lot. And I knew one thing I needed to do was ask all the questions. Whatever the situation, I needed to ask. If I have a question, if I wasn't sure why they were doing something, if I wasn't sure why they asked me to change something that I did, I would need to ask why. Because if you think about it, programming, I'm not going to say that it's the only one, but it's definitely one of the few jobs where it's important if you get to the correct result. That's the point. But it's also important, the way you get there is also important. It's not only about whether your code does what it's supposed to, it's also about whether your code looks good, maintainable, readable, it adheres by the standards your company or your team follows. That's why we do code reviews. It's not only to spot bugs, it's also to check the code in and of itself. Right? Does this make sense? Okay, excellent. And so I knew that when they reviewed my code, I would need to take the opportunity to ask them, why do you think I should change that? And not in an arrogant way, but in an honest way. If you think it's a better idea, would you mind explaining me why? Because maybe next time I can do it better on the first pass, and we don't need to waste our time going back and forth. And with that, I knew I would have to embrace feedback. Feedback, it's nice when they tell you, Rodrigo, what a nice piece of code you wrote. It feels good. And doesn't feel as good if they just say, Rodrigo, please, what are you doing? that's not so great, but if they provide constructive criticism, then that's the best type of feedback you can get. And it might sting a bit, but if you manage to swallow your pride just enough to actually read the concrete suggestions, and if you ignore the part where it just hurts a bit, and if you take a look at the objective things that you stand to gain from the review feedback, that's the best thing you can do. And I was mentally prepared for that. And let me actually go back, because I don't always remember all of the things I want to say, but this particular thing I really want to say it. And this is particularly funny because I have a background in math, so implications, there's something I'm well aware of. And I've heard, I've read, I've listened to people say that intelligent people, they are not afraid of asking questions, because it's not, just because you don't know something doesn't mean you're not intelligent. So intelligent people ask questions. And so I try to do the reverse. I ask the questions so that maybe that makes me more intelligent. I try. It's an ongoing process. I'll let you know how it goes. All right, so now I'm going to show you something very funny, at least for me. This was the project I was working on, just because I know you're probably dying. Now that you know that I was working at Textual, you can now fall asleep. Everyone was thinking, where was Rodrigo working? So I was working on this framework, and this was a PR. This was one of the first PRs I made. This was one of my first contributions. And Will asked for one request. Not too bad, right? This was 11 days after I joined, and I made the PR, and Will only had one request. One is better than two requests, right? Because it's fewer requests. And you would think that with practice I would get better. But a couple of weeks later, Will had a few requests. And this kept going. I kept making pull requests, and Will kept asking for changes. And one day, it felt like I nailed it on the first try. But it was Dave that accepted the changes. So Will then came and said, no, this actually needs a couple of more changes. And this just keeps going. And this is obviously a caricature of the time I spent there, because these are not all of the pull requests I made. Also not all of the changes requested I got. But this is not all of my work. And I'm also not showing you what my colleagues did, because this is part of the process, right? Everyone makes mistakes. I don't always come up with the best solution ever on the first try. Other people have other experiences, and remember, they're more experienced than I am, so they've seen different problems, they've worked in different places, so they know different things. So it's reasonable to expect that I'm not going to get everything at the best possible level on the first try always. That's pretty reasonable. And the same thing happened with them, obviously. And again, if you're doing code reviews, if your code is being reviewed and if they ask you to change something, if you really believe your option was the best, ask, why do you think I should change? And if you're reviewing their code and you see something you don't understand, ask, why do you think this is best? Why didn't you do X, Y, Z? And they either tell you, because I did consider X, Y, Z, but I was working on this, I spent more time thinking about it, and I concluded it was a bad idea because of ABC. And then you learn about ABC. Or they actually say, oh, wow, I kind of forgot about X, Y, Z. So yeah, that's actually better. So it's a win-win. I really don't see the downside of asking questions. I don't. You can, when we get to the Q&A, you can fight me on this. But like the last speaker said, you're going to be wrong. But yeah, we can talk, of course. I'm open to dialogue. Everyone makes mistakes. We saw that. This is important. Age-old adage. I got it. It's the age-old adage, but it just makes sense, and I had to put it there because I kept making mistakes, and the way they handled my mistakes was very gracious, and it just puts you in a comfortable position. You don't want to do the same mistake twice. That's borderline. I think Einstein defined stupidity as making the same mistake twice. I might be completely wrong. You can never trust the quote sources on internet, but something like that. So don't make the same mistake twice, but making an honest mistake is a good thing. assuming you spent time thinking about what you're doing. If you just couldn't arrive at the correct conclusion, I think that's reasonable. So bear that in mind. And this is a bit more of self-deprecating humor. This was the lowest point of my career. Probably, literally, this was the lowest point of my career. I stripped the context because I'm ashamed of what's above my reply. If you boil it down, we can talk about it later. I can give you more details so you actually understand what went on. But I essentially opened a bug report that said, folks, so I ran the code. I hope you're sitting for this. And the code ran. This was my bug report. If you strip away the context, if you look at the core message of my bug report, it said, I ran the code and the code ran. This is wrong. And Dave very calmly replied, Rodrigo, are you sure that's a bug? It looks pretty okay to me. You know, if you run the code is supposed to run. And then I closed the issue in shame. Thankfully, I was working remotely, so I could cry alone in my corner. They didn't see that. That was a relief. Now let's go on and talk about the worst thing that can happen to your open source projects. Users. Which is also the best thing. You just have to know how to manage things, how to manage expectations. And for me, this section of the talk is actually something that I wish people would have told me earlier because of my nature. And again, this is maybe the most subjective part of the talk, because my nature is, I'm not very confrontational in some situations, or I try to be agreeable. Yes, and sometimes that puts me in interesting spots when I'm interacting with users on issues or pull requests. And the very first tip that I have, the very first thing, actually it's not the first thing I learned, but it's the thing I'm showing you first. And if you're sleeping, now is the time to wake up. If you only take one thing away from this talk, please let it be that you should create a contributing guide. Please create a contributing guide. No one will read it at first, but it's still going to be helpful. The contributing guide will have your back in a number of situations. If I don't forget any throughout my talk, I'm going to mention like 5 of them or so. So create a contributing guide. You can fall back to sleep now. The first thing you can do after creating the contributing guide is making sure that you give clear instructions to the people that report bugs on your project. And we know that in an utopian world, everyone has heard of MREs, the minimal reproducible examples, and everyone has the time to create good MREs, and everyone presents an MRE when they open a bug report. But that's in an utopian world. In the real world, people will open issues that you can't even understand from the linguistic point of view, let alone the implications in your code. So if you're, and this is now a very GitHub-centric tip, if you work with GitHub, you can actually create issue templates so that when the user goes on your project and clicks the new issue button, they are actually presented with a couple of different things they can pick from. And these options, they can be, well, they're templated. So you can include useful information to guide the user in filling the report or in requesting a feature or whatever. And one of the things that you're going to do in your issue templates is, can you guess? Refer to the contributing guide. So contributing guide 1, users 0. We're getting started. Do this. In your contributing guide, be very verbose, very clear, set the expectations, tell the user, please do X, Y, Z when you submit a bug report. And when the user submits the bug report and they do not do X, Y, Z, because most of them will not, and it's not because they want to be annoying, it's just they didn't, you refer back to the contributing guide, because the contributing guide will outline what you expect and what you need, and it's going to make it much easier for you to actually try and fix that bug, or try and work on that feature that they're requesting. So the contributing guide is a very important document, in my opinion. The next thing that I think is so important, and one thing I strive to do, is that when you're interacting with your users, you should be so kind it's annoying. And this is I know people who disagree with this point of view, and that's fine. But I try to take this stance. I try to be so kind it's annoying. And I do this in part because I believe in some sort of karma. When I tend to be nice, people tend to be nice to me, so that's actually good. But also because you're interacting with people through text, which is not the perfect medium to convey emotions. And you're interacting with people whose first language is not English. And sometimes they just have a hard time coming up with the right words to actually say what they want to say. One time I insulted a user by mistake because I used the false friends. A word that in Portuguese means something, sounds very similar to a word in English, and doesn't mean the same thing. And by mistake, I kind of insulted the user. Thankfully, the user knew me already from previous interactions, and a native English speaker also went past and said, "Rodrigo, maybe you didn't mean to use that word." And then I looked it up, and I didn't. But okay, so mistakes can happen. So when someone writes something that looks a little bit rude or aggressive, I think to myself, okay, maybe that person is not a native English speaker and cannot express their thoughts as eloquently as they would have liked. Maybe this is true, maybe this is false, doesn't matter. I choose to believe it's true, and it helps me when interacting with others. And another thing, give your first reply quickly. I think it's important that if someone opens an issue or opens a pull request, you should give a first reply quickly. It doesn't have to be a complete code review. It's just a first reply. Say, hey, thanks for your time. I'll get back to this ASAP. If you do this and then you take 3 months to review the pull request, it's one thing. If you say nothing and take 3 months to review the pull request, it's a completely different thing, and the user still had to wait 3 months. Trust me, it's not the same thing. First reply quickly. And take the opportunity to skim through whatever was done, and if you spot things that are out of place, refer to the contributing guide. You're saving everyone time. Hey, look, I noticed that you did something not in the best way for us. Can you please refer to the contributing guide for our style guide, for example? And that saves time. Actually, I forgot to start my timer. Okay, so Sage. All right. So just checking the time because I have a timer here. But it's at 0. So I still have 30 minutes, right? So let me start the timer now.
Can we go back to sleep now?
Exactly. You can go. You can go back to sleep now. Alrighty. So first reply, do it quickly, please. And to close off this whole section, let me tell you about handling external pull requests, which is an interesting experience for me. I've seen plenty of times, and I'm not that old nor that experienced, so if I've seen this a bunch of times, most of you have seen something similar as well. There's this project, and a random person submits a random pull request out of the blue. Which is good, because it means that random people take enough interest in your project that they actually spend time to make a pull request. But also, maybe that pull request implements something that you don't want in your project, and that's fair game. Maybe it implements something you want, but it was designed in a way that you don't agree with. It's fair game. Maybe you actually agree with the design, but it doesn't follow your style guide. And I've seen this. There's hundreds of files. Every single function has a docstring. Every single docstring follows the same pattern, but somehow this user thinks that their functions don't need docstrings. Just take a look around. All of the code has docstrings. Why do you think your code doesn't need docstrings? So if that happens, you refer them to the contributing guide. Because even the smaller things, maybe your project only uses variable names with 5 letters. Maybe that's your thing. And if that's your thing and you actually enforce that, you should put that in the contributing guide, because then when a user makes a PR and they do not follow that guideline, if you just go and say, hey, please change your variable names so that they only use 5 letters, that can sound kind of picky, because it might be your style, but it's not materially important in the code, right? But if you just say, hey, as per the contributing guide, we only use 5-letter variable names, now you're shifting the, for the lack of a better word, I'll say blame. You're shifting the blame to the contributing guide. So the contributing guide acts as a shield. You just say, hey, the contributing guide says you should do X, Y, Z, so please abide by the contributing guide. It's not you saying to the user, look, I really want you to use 5-letter variable names. So this is the specific situation in which I found the contributing guide to be the most helpful. And there was some other points, some other examples, some other contrived situation I wanted to talk about. But essentially, just keep referring to the contributing guide. Make it as verbose as possible. And finally, some notes on closing. I don't mean merging, I mean closing PRs. One thing I find important, again, it's important to me because of the things I believe in and because of my experiences. Maybe you see it in a different way. But again, I think that this specific point, it's not about you, the maintainer or the contributor, or the core contributor. It's about the other users contributing to your project. Imagine someone here with less experience on open source attends this talk. They also attended Sydney's talk yesterday, and they're surrounded by all of us who work with open source, maybe not full time, but in our spare time. Everyone is enthusiastic about it, and everyone says, you should contribute, you have to contribute. And then they enthusiastically open their favorite project, they forget to read the contributing guide, and they make a pull request out of the blue, and it's actually something that users already requested 5 times, and you already justified 5 times that you don't want. And so you essentially have to close that PR. If you just close it, it's going to be a hit to the person that just did all of the work, even though it was redundant. It's going to be a hit. And so what I try to do, it's obviously not always possible, but what I try to do is I try to take a look at the PR and see, is there anything in this PR that I could merge? Can I pick something that I could merge? Because if you can, you close the PR, but then you go ahead and merge the small change that was actually useful, and you add, and this is the most important thing, you add the other person as a co-author of the commit. And now suddenly this person has a contribution. And okay, maybe you had to throw away a big part of the PR, but if there was something that was actually salvageable, that can really make a difference, because it gets them going and it helps them get momentum. Now, there's obviously no time for the story, so you have to ask me later. And finally, to close off the whole talk, let me give you a couple of notes on working on a big code base. And big is subjective. It depends on you. I'll define big as something that doesn't fit in your brain completely. So I was not able to fit in my memory all of the code, all of the details, all of the files. No way. And when I was working on code, and remember, I'm working on something that I do not understand entirely. There were 4 things I always kept in mind when writing code. And they were, I needed to think, if I'm implementing this issue, what's best for the developer that's going to use my code? I need to think about them. What do they need? What do they want? I need to think, this is big for me, what's the spirit of the issue? It's not what's literally written there, it's what's the point of what's written there. If you take this problem, take this string as input and produce this output, the way this is written, this is a valid reply. It's not the point of the question, but this works. And as a mathematician myself, I'm the kind of person that tends to do this, not on purpose to be annoying, but just because it works. I mean, it satisfies the requirements. So this was big for me. I needed to keep track of what is the purpose of what I'm doing, not just what's written there. I skipped the point. I take the hit so that the dev that's going to use my code doesn't. If it's an annoying edge case, I have to cover for it. If it's boring to implement, who cares? I have to implement it so that the dev can actually use my code. And finally, when I'm making design changes and design decisions, with my choices now, am I possibly preventing something reasonable in the future? Is there a universe in which someone might want to be able to do something that my choices now prevent from happening? This was something important to keep in mind that I managed to constantly screw up, honestly. It's impressive. Just take notes, pretty standard advice. And the second best thing from this talk is my personal pull request checklist. I read an issue, I write some code, and then I ask myself, did I fix the whole issue? Because for some reason I would read an issue with 3 parts, implement the first and think, yeah, I'm done. And then go back to the issue, oh wait, I forgot about everything else. And if I haven't fixed the whole issue, then I write some more code. And if I did fix the whole issue, I'll go ahead and I'll run the tests. And then again, just to make sure. And after I run the tests, I take a look at my code and I check, did I actually remove all of the prints that I just added? Because more often than not, I didn't. So I would remove the prints and I would run the tests. And if I did, I would just run the tests either way, because you can never be too sure. And immediately before making the PR, I would ask myself, was running the tests the very last thing that I did? The very last thing that I did? Because if it wasn't, I would run the tests. And if it seems like I have an obsessive behavior here, it's because I do. Because I've managed to break CI with the most unusual things. I fixed documentation typos and managed to break CI with that. I've done amazing things, actually. Actually, they're engineering feats. I've made incredible things. So I just run the tests, and then I make my PR. Now you can take a picture. This is the second best thing from the talk. And what I would also do is actually make a draft PR and take a quick look at my own PR first. Because more often than not, I would find something that actually needed changing. So I was the first person to review my PRs. In summary, maybe the 4 main things to take out of this. Everything you do online acts as a banner for yourself. Make sure at least it doesn't work against you. Be open to learning. Be kind and add a contributing guide to your project. And run the tests. My name is Rodrigo. Thank you so much for sleeping with me today. And if you are interested in the technical content I produce, you can find my books in this QR code. Thanks.
Well, thanks a lot, Rodrigo, for sharing your experience. I'm afraid we're a bit short on time, but I think it was lovely, and I'm positive that you will be available if people want to discuss this topic with you. So I'd ask, Andrea, will you join us for our next talk? It's okay, it's okay. We're good, we're good. So, for those of us that think that running SQLite in concurrent production environments is nuts, I invite us all to listen to what Andrzej has to tell us about it and what lessons he learned about it. Please, let's welcome Andrzej.
Thank you all. Yes, so let's talk about SQLite. So is anybody in the room that hasn't heard what or hasn't seen what SQLite is? Okay, you're gonna make my job very easy then. So SQLite is a database in a file. So it's very portable, it's ACID compliant, and it's in the public domain. So it's even a step above just being open source. It's heavily tested, and this thing is everywhere. It's the most widely deployed database, and maybe even most widely deployed software in the world. It's on every Android device, every iOS device. It's on my Mac. It's on Windows machines. And it's even embedded in our browsers. So for us Python developers, it's also inside our Python. The SQLite binary is embedded in every Python installation, and you can access it by just writing import SQLite 3. And then you can run queries, create databases, and all of that without installing anything other than Python itself. And because of this ease of use, SQLite is the default database for Django. So when you create a new project, the database that's going to be configured is going to be SQLite. So when I ask, is SQLite ready for production, or is it good to be used in production, this question is sort of meaningless. It is in production. It's running everywhere. If it's not good enough to run in production, then my laptop's going to crash in the next few seconds. My phone won't work. Like, our world would probably break at this point if SQLite wasn't stable. So why do we all know? So what's so special with web applications that makes us think that SQLite is somehow not appropriate? And there is one little gotcha. So when you're running a database on someone's phone, you usually don't get 1,000 concurrent users trying to write into that database. So the use case is a little bit different when it comes to the places where you usually find SQLite and the use case that you have when you're running a production server with actual users using the software. So this is why in the Django docs, there's this sentence saying that if you're starting your first real project, you might want to choose a database that's more scalable. Even though this thing completely contradicts what's written in the SQLite docs, where it says that SQLite is probably good enough for most medium to medium traffic websites. And the number that they put up here, 100,000 hits per day, that's a huge number. Like, if you remember the charts from my talk yesterday, that's how much traffic I get in a month. So for all of my use cases, it sounds like SQLite should be perfect. And that's why when I started a new project a year ago, I decided to use SQLite to see how it works, to see if it really does make my life easier. Because I was tired of configuring a Postgres bouncer to manage connections for me. Because I just wanted a single file on my system for the database. It's just easier. It fits into my mind much easier. So I spent quite some time over the last year learning about SQLite, testing SQLite, reading the SQLite documentation, reading posts about SQLite, everything about SQLite. And now I have an answer for you whether or not SQLite is appropriate. And this answer is, of course, it depends. Yeah, I wish I had a better answer, but I will take this opportunity in the next 15 minutes to try to explain what this actually depends on. Okay, so let's start with some simple use cases. Let's say we have some read-only use case to start with. So in this example, we have gathered some data from somewhere. This data is now perfect. It doesn't need any modification at all. We just pack it into the SQLite file, the database itself, and now we can ship it to the users. We can do this in many ways. We can have it on a Raspberry Pi. We can embed it into a Docker image and have it deployed to all over the world. There are even services out there that allow you to put SQLite on the CDN edge so that it's as close to the user as possible, which means the latency is going to be tiny. This is the ideal case for SQLite, read-only use cases. If we take a look at the benchmark that I ran on a Hetzner machine that I spin up just to run benchmarks, you can see that SQLite is faster than Postgres and MySQL. It's not an order of magnitude faster, but it is faster. And this is with some configuration to make sure that Postgres doesn't open a new connection every time that you create a request. So there were some optimizations done to get the numbers as high as they are for the other two databases. And this is SQLite out of the box, no configuration, nothing. So my relationship with SQLite at this point entered the honeymoon stage. It seemed like everything is possible, that we're going to have an amazing time, and this is the best solution ever. And then I decided that maybe my data isn't perfect. Maybe users need to change it from time to time. In other words, had to start writing into the database while it was deployed somewhere. And now the big thing with SQLite is that writes block. Writes block the whole database. There's no per table locks, no per row locks. It's just you block the whole database every time that you make a write. And if you don't tinker with any configuration, this block not only blocks other writes coming into the database, it also blocks reads. So when I ran a read and write benchmark, so not just read requests now, but also 10% of those requests were writes, the number of requests per second tanked. We were doing more than 2,000 requests per second with a read-only benchmark, but now we can't even get up to 600. So that's a huge reduction in performance right there. Now there is a way for you to improve this. You can unblock reads when writes are happening by enabling the write ahead log. So you run this pragma command, and then every write that comes in doesn't get saved into the main database file, but instead there's a journal file that gets created and that writes start writing into. So at that point, you can have writes coming into the database and not block reads. And that improves the benchmark by 2x. So now we're back at in 1,200 requests per second. And yes, I've mentioned this before, but you're still going to be stuck with one concurrent write per database. And if we compare this with with Postgres and MySQL, we can see that when we just make writes, no reads this time, the performance of SQLite is never going to be as good. Like the primitives that you have in Postgres and MySQL are just going to work better when it comes to just pure writes. But I would also like to point out that even while we're doing only writes, SQLite is still doing like 600 requests per second. And that's a big number. And I bet if I rewrote this benchmark that was using Django as the server into a compiled language like Go or Rust, this number would increase. So the bottleneck here isn't SQLite itself. It's the combination of SQLite and Python. So if you really want to gain more performance, you're probably at this point better off rewriting your application in a different language. And nobody wants to do that because we all love Python. So in this case, my relationship with SQLite has moved on to the next phase. I call it the transitioning phase. This is where you know that SQLite isn't perfect. You know it has some problems, but you still think things are going to work out. Everything is going to be fine. And then you start thinking about transactions. So I added transactions to the application that I was working on to make sure that I don't get partial updates or, to have my data properly secure. And then I started getting these errors. Database is locked, operational error. Database is locked. So this makes sense. If you have a write lock on your database, and then you have another request that also wants to get that write lock, that second thread is going to have to wait a little bit. It's going to have to wait a little bit for the database to get freed up, and then it's going to try again. Okay, no problem. And if this other thread has to wait for too long, like more than 5 seconds, which is the default timeout, it's going to raise an error. Makes perfect sense. Okay, the proper solution to this problem, right? Increase the timeout. Okay, all is fixed. Nothing is going to take this long. This is a huge number, and this is in seconds. I don't even know how long this is. Still this error. What the hell is going on? And at this point, the relationship was in a real crisis. I didn't know what was happening. I didn't understand why I was still getting this error. All of the transactions were fast. Nothing took more than 1 second. And things were still timing out. I was even thinking about other databases. So I know it's Friday afternoon. This is the last talk. And to understand the problem that I was going through, we kind of have to look at transaction isolation levels. So I might lose you all at this point, but I'm going to try to get through this as fast as possible. So transaction isolation levels are essentially, let's call them, how well do your transactions work? So if we look at the first isolation level called read uncommitted, this is like the YOLO isolation level. And with this, there actually isn't an isolation level, if we're honest. Because if you have a transaction that's wrote some things into the database but hasn't committed yet, you'll be able to see those changes in another transaction. That's crazy. Who would want that? But then we go to the next isolation level, the read committed. And this one is the default one for most frameworks, at least for most web frameworks. Why? Because it solves this commit issue. You will only be able to see things that were actually committed, but you still have a bunch of other possible issues, like non-repeatable reads and phantom reads. But those actually, in a web application context, don't matter that much, because those just tell you that if you do the same query in the same transaction multiple times, you're going to get the same result. And if in read committed, that's not the case. But if you're doing the same query multiple times in the same request, then you probably have a performance issue. Why are you querying the same data twice? Just remove the extra query. Return the data to the user a little bit faster. Your users will be happy. So this is what most databases allow you to configure. You can pick which isolation level is appropriate for you. This is not the case with SQLite. SQLite only has the serializable isolation level, and it implements it in a way that's a little bit annoying for the developer. It doesn't mean that your code is just going to run slower. It means that it might raise exceptions, like the exceptions that I've been getting. And to see that, I can quickly demonstrate how SQLite does this. So SQLite uses deferred transactions, which means that it's going to try to defer acquiring the lock as long as possible. So we start with the begin. SQLite doesn't really need the write lock at this point, so it's going to just acquire a read lock. It's going to query the database here. And now, when it's time to do the update, this is when it goes and acquires the lock. And if there's no other transaction or another write happening, it's going to be able to get the lock, commit the code, and everything's going to be fine. But if there is something else happening at the same time, then this line will fail. And for SQLite, it won't make sense to wait until the other transaction finishes, because that other transaction might change the database. And then SQLite doesn't know. If you have another select statement later on, it might return a different result that it did right now, which means the serializable isolation level is going to not be respected. So what SQLite does in this instance, it throws an error, the error that I've been getting. And that's why the timeout didn't change anything, because you can wait all you want, but this transaction is ruined. The solution, once you understand the problem, is actually simple. You log the database before you do any selects beforehand. And there's a keyword for that, begin immediate. This, of course, has a bit of a downside, because now the whole database is locked from the time you run your first begin, or the begin immediate, until your commit. And this can, in a lot of, especially if you're now running a bunch of Python code in between, this might be slow, and it might cause problems. Now, one way to avoid this is you can have multiple SQLite files. So you put some tables into different SQLite files, and that way you have multiple locks. And that can help speed things up. But now your application code needs to be aware of this. And at this point, you're probably better off using something like Postgres. where you don't have to worry about this. It's handled for you by the database. So, now that we've come through the other end of this tunnel, I feel like SQLite and I are in this partnership stage. I know what SQLite likes, I know what it dislikes, and I know how to make us both happy. So just a quick detour. There were a few changes merged into Django 5.1 that help keep SQLite happy. The first one was there's now an option for you to configure immediate transactions right in your settings.py file. This was a contribution that I managed to get merged, so I'm really happy to get that merged. It was even my first pull request into the Django repository, so yay me. And the second one was the addition of the init command that allows you to set the pragmas that we looked at the a little bit earlier, so the journal mode. And there's a few other ones that you can set if you want to improve the performance a little bit. Now, I've tried to benchmark all of these, and the only one that actually made a very impactful difference was journal mode. The rest, they were probably lost in the noise of the benchmark and the fact that Python itself adds a bit of overhead. So in summary, SQLite is an amazing database if all you want to do is read from it. You can easily distribute it, and it works really well. It also very likely won't be the bottleneck if you're just doing write-heavy workloads. Like the amount of writes that you can do on a fairly fast SSD machine these days, it can scale to hundreds, if not thousands of concurrent users without much issue. The thing is, you do need to be careful with transactions, especially if you do them inside Python code that can run a lot slower than the C code that SQLite is written in. And remember, you chose SQLite to keep things simple. If things are getting complicated, maybe it's best to say, it's not you, it's me. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrzej, for sharing your experiences and insights. We have time for a few questions for those of us interested. I see two hands at the back. That's front. Okay. We have time. Where are we? Where are the hands? We have hands here. Okay. There you go.
Hi. Thank you for the presentation. So one question, imagine that you have a distributed, let's say, a backend server, so you have like 10 different machines and you want to talk with only one backend instance. If it's the read-only one, then you can have 10 copies, but if otherwise, how do you handle that parallelization, let's say?
Yeah, thank you. So you unlock the secret slide. So, yes, you have options for getting SQLite to work on multiple servers. I believe the most known one or most used these days is LiteFS. It's basically a file system designed for syncing your database onto multiple machines. Now, the drawback with this approach is that you'll still sort of have to route your write requests to the primary server so that then those changes can get propagated to all the others. And this is slightly annoying because, again, this implementation detail then bleeds into your application code a little bit. And so this was fly.io that implemented or that is working on LiteFS, and they have a few ways for you to specify to make it easier for you to get this to work. Like you can set special headers in your request to make sure that they get routed to the correct server, the one that has the primary. But again, you as an application developer are going to have to think about this. For every query that you write, you're going to have to say, oh, do I have to do a write? Oh, then this request has to go to this other server. And if you're doing that, I think it makes more sense to use a database like Postgres, where you don't have to think about it. It is possible. You can get this to work. It's just not going to be as convenient.
Okay, we had another question in the back here. There you go.
Hi, thank you. Great talk. I just wanted to maybe also extend this question. Like, have you tried SQLite, for example, with Cloudflare, because they have, I think, a distributed solution right now, or like any open source similar like way of doing that?
Yeah, so I haven't tried the Cloudflare version of this. I imagine it has some of the same issues as Fly.io, in the sense that you can't just forget about this limitation that SQLite has, that you always have to have writes go to one instance and then propagate those down. Otherwise, you're just going to have conflicts between them. SQLite hasn't really been designed in this regard, but again, if you have a read-only use case, then I bet Cloudflare works amazingly, because it just makes sure your database is everywhere in the world. So the latency is going to be very small for all the users.
And I think we had a question somewhere around here, didn't we?
More in
All
front.
back. There's one in the front. There was one here. No. Where is it? Hands in the air. There was a hand here. Oh, there you go.
Hi. So, about SQLite, the Rails community is moving towards a SQLite-backed caching system and queuing system. Do you see like the Django community going towards something like that? Like you said, with the way the SSDs are now faster than, sometimes not faster than RAM, but almost at the same pace as we have in our systems now.
Yes, so congratulations. You have also unlocked the secret slide. Yeah, so like you said, the Rails community does have what they call light stack. It's essentially a whole set of applications that run on SQLite. So you have your full text search database, your, of course, relational database, and even your task queuing and management database, as well as caching. All of that built using separate SQLite instances. Now it can work, and I don't think the Python, or at least the Django community, is going to we're not going to build our own light stack. It feels like it's a little bit too risky to put all of your eggs into a single basket, even though it might simplify things in the short term. I would say that, I don't know, you really have to be sold on the idea that SQLite can, for sure, handle all your use cases for personal projects. Sure, that this can work well, but at some point, probably you will want to have multiple servers running, just so that you can apply updates without worrying that everything is going to go down. So, I don't know, I'm a fan of SQLite, but I don't think I would actually want to go that deep into this myself. I am, of course, keeping an eye on this, because it is super interesting, and I really want to see how far they manage to get it.
Okay, and I think we have no further questions, so please let's thank Anjay again with a warm round of applause. And now we're on to one of the funkiest moments of the day, the lightning talks. I'd ask the speakers to line up here. I don't know who's going to coordinate the lightning talks because I'm doing one myself and I can't kind of track my own time. Will you do that, Rodrigo? Okay. There you go. I used to have a laptop.
Deixa eu ver. Vira só um bocadinho mais para mim, por favor. Oi, espera aí. Tá, só para conseguir ver. Hey everyone, I'm very happy to see that today we have a much better looking board than yesterday. So we have 7 lightning talks and can I not count? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Thank you. I studied 5 years of maths for this. This was my moment. Now, Nicholas, are you ready to have your moment?
No, not yet. I just want to know, does it? Yeah, it does work. Are you getting sound, and can we actually hear it? Because mine contains sound, so I should be playing something. Okay, it's coming out of my laptop, but it's not coming out of the speakers. I'm kind of looking at the audio viz guys at the back. Are you able to pipe? I mean, this is lovely music. This is from North Africa. Tumani Diabate. Oh, it's lovely.
I think this is the point where I make a joke. Did it work?
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, so while Nicholas sets up, is everyone else, is Jorge already close to the stage? Where's Jorge? All right. And yeah, okay, so the following speakers, they're close by. So today we're going to go with the same, so the logic of the lightning talk is still the same. You talk about whatever you want, you have 5 minutes. Because today we have 7 speakers, and because I managed to get to delay everything with my talk, we will be stricter on time. So I'll be keeping track of time, and if I start to clap, you can join me and clap the speaker out of the stage, all right? Yeah, sounds good? Excellent. Nicola.
Still looking at sound, sorry. It is important, honest. And it's still 5 to 5. We're
We're on time.
Okay, which one
For
am I
now.
using?
Try every single one just to see if the audio is coming.
Output device, no. HDMI, out, test. Click speaker to test. Yeah, I was just thinking that. Is that okay? Good, I'm going to do that then. Let's just hack it.
Live debugging, everyone.
Yeah. Okay, let me pause that lovely music.
What?
So I'm ready when you are.
I'm ready when you are. Go ahead, you can
Okay,
start, I think.
awesome. I'm waiting for you to say, make it so, and I can kind of engage. Okay, chicken. No, don't worry, I'm not going to do that again. Okay, so I'm going to tell you about PyScript, which is basically my day job. It's an open source platform, so I'm in the very privileged situation of being able to work on open source code. This is our homepage. That is PyScript loading. That's pretty damn quick. Right now, it's kind of like doing a little bit of funky stuff just to show that actually this is a real live REPL. This is me typing now. Whoops, PT, there we go. Right, okay, so that's Python in the browser. It's as quick as that, okay? Unlike other Python in the browsers that you might have seen before, we are not transpiling to JavaScript, nor have we tried to re-implement a version of Python in JavaScript. What you have here is MicroPython that's written in C, and we also have CPython written in C, compiled to WebAssembly, and we're using the sandbox that's built into the browser to make that happen. Okay, so that's our homepage, pyscript.net. If you want to find out more, we have extensive documentation, of course we do, and this is our home on GitHub. We're friendly, and we have lots of interesting technical discussions over there, so please come and join us with that. But what I really want to show you is pyscript.com, which is run by Anaconda. Anaconda pay me to work on this, and this is something that they provide. It's a commercial product, although it's free to use at the moment, so it's free to sign up. If you want to use PyScript, it's basically an IDE in your browser, and I'm going to show you Cat Disco, which is a demo that I made. I wrote a very simple game engine, which is in utils.py, and that is less than 150 lines of Python code, okay? The actual game is in main.py, and that's less than 100 lines, okay? And it's a very simple game. I have cats, and I have a score, and we have an event handler for when a cat is clicked, okay? And it basically does things like adds one to the score, and it makes the cat fly off the screen, and it plays a sound effect. And then we have an update function that updates each iteration of the game loop. So this is how we're kind of like playing the game here. So I'm sort of adding cats at random, changing the frequency at which cats will appear, and then and so on and so forth, and making them move around. And then there's go, which is actually kick the whole thing off. And I can actually see the game itself on the right-hand side, so this is the game running as well. So this is pyscript.com as a kind of like an IDE in your browser for running PyScript. And so if I click Start, you'll soon get the idea as to what the Cat Disco does. Oop. Okay. Of course, random isn't working. Okay. Hey. Whoa. Oh, man. It's so hard to use a mouse like this. There we go. Oh, man. So, instead of watching me play a stupid cat game, let me just do that. That's how long it takes to actually load the game. I can also share it. Remember, one of the things that I said about PyScript is that you just point people at a URL. Well, there you go. You hold up your phones, you look at the QR code, and you play the game. And right now, you look like you're all at a rock concert. And can I hear that awful music? Yeah, all that meowing. Oh man, just keep it up. This is awesome. Can I just ask, audio viz guys, are you picking up all this meowing sound from the audience? You are? Okay, so when this video is out on YouTube, they're going to be able to see that. Okay, awesome. Okay, I get the feeling I'm probably going to be reported to, the Animal Protection League or something like that for, whatever. And actually, the original name of this game was Splattercat, but a colleague pointed out that actually you should probably just make them fly off the screen rather than splat. So there we go. PyScript is fun. PyScript helps you make sure that Python runs everywhere a browser runs, which is everywhere. It has CPython, so anything you can do in CPython, you can pretty much do in PyScript. It also has MicroPython, which is very, very fast, very, very small. So you can get in under 300 kilobytes a working Python environment in your web page. 300K is less than most hero images on websites. Okay, we're a friendly community. Come say hi. We have a Discord server. So I don't know. Say hi, folks. You're on stage at Pycon Portugal. And of course, they're all probably sleeping now. But anyway, the important thing is that we have a Discord server, and folks, we're friendly. come say hi, build goofy things, maybe not another cat game, but you get the idea. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicholas.
You're welcome.
George, you can come and set up. Do you have anything to set up at all?
Yes.
Okay, so you can start to set up. I think that the most impressive thing about Nicholas's lightning talk was actually that Nicholas was able to type with his hands bent like this, which is... that explains it. Okay. Are you good to go?
Can you hear it? Yeah? Do you understand what he says? It's quite slow. No, the speaker is also. Let's see. So, teased by Nicholas, who talked about the MicroPython, and by Rodrigo, who asked, what did you learn yesterday? Yesterday I learned about MicroPython and microbit. Okay? I actually talk about microbit. And I just bought one, and I decided to check if I could do a Bluetooth peripheral out of it. And yesterday I had a gap of 20 minutes while my laundry was drying in the drying machine. So yes, 20 minutes to learn if I can make it. MicroPython, microbit, BLE. What I found, okay, it has Bluetooth support. Maybe I can do it. That's what I thought. Okay, where are the examples? Okay, I'm not finding the examples. Okay, suddenly I realized, and 20 minutes passed, laundry was dry, and was actually not possible yet, because MicroPython doesn't have support to work with the Bluetooth libraries. I had to go on with C++. And I thought, no, I don't have time for that. 20 minutes passed. But this is too much fun. So I decided, okay, what can I do with it? And first thing I tried to do was this. He's saying chicken. I did it. Quite cool. So I thought, oh, maybe he can speak more languages. Let's see. Yes, that's Franco. And then I thought, maybe can crack a Portuguese joke. See? And then I found out, oh, I can also play some stuff here. So I decided to write one of the most romantic Portuguese songs that I could remember. Portuguese here, recognize this? The song is about codfish, the wife's codfish. And just saying he wants to smell it. The wife's codfish. Very romantic. Yeah, so it was fun in the end. I explored a really a corner case, but I found out that it's really cool device. So I urge you to go and explore. And as a last thing, thank you.
Thank you, George. Anastasia, did I say your name correctly? No. I tried.
Oh, it is really hard. It's like...
Yeah, well, while you set up, let me just tell everyone that George is giving a workshop tomorrow, and we'll be exploring how Bluetooth works, right? All right, so you can... All right, so if you're around, remember to stop by George's workshop. Are you ready?
No.
Excellent. The floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. I want to share with you my little past, my little Python story. Why Python? Just because it's coincidence. So I am a student of Polytechnical Institute, and on my first lesson, I was exploring Linux system. Before it, I have never seen terminal before. I worked only on Windows, and the only thing I know how to play Sims. That's all I knew. And also, I think they just gave me a diploma because I know how to reinstall Windows on my computer. That was already a success. So when I was in the first grade course in 2019, my first project was to write Hello World, and I made a mistake. Even ID says me that I've made a mistake, and I wasn't so acquainted with the programming community. So I think if I was, this would be my first issue. So how to write print in Python, but I just didn't know what is Stack Overflow, unfortunately. I would make so many issues there. The second my work was to write this. I've had theory about how to write loops, what is while true, and then when you see this, you can't put together how to make a solution for this when the teacher just says you have a loop, you have some data, you can iterate through it, so crack the pentagon, please, if you can. And then there is more, there is functions. Why do we need this? No, there is not functions. That is, spoilers. You had a task for braces, if they are all balanced, yesterday. And I also had the task, but I had to extract what is inside the braces. I used ORT to find the braces. I used 2 loops and 3 if. I think this is a bit harder than your solution. And, oh yeah, function, def func. I didn't understand why did we need it at all. My teacher says we can use it, reuse it, reuse it, reuse it. I think reuse for what? I have cycles. So if I will use a function, I have cycle, I will have 10 cycles at one time. I'm fine, I will reuse it. Okay, please accept it, okay. And then classes. Thank you, I didn't start from Java, where is OOP everywhere, and classes. But I was not ready in Python for it. Also, I think everyone who saw classes is like, what is self? Who is self? Who do I mention there? Why do I need init? Why do I need this class at all? Because my teacher couldn't give me a hard task where class is really practical and can be implemented. So we just iterate through a list using class. And we just pass a dictionary there just to pass it and nothing else. So as it was 5 years ago, my hand's still shaking when I see it because it was hard to understand it. And here is 2024, where I'm able to understand all of your speaks. I'm able to make jokes about programming and understand memes. During these 5 years, I've tried to make apps. It was hard because this button, I can't catch it. It's everywhere. And also I've tried web on Python. It was very interesting because you can actually make solutions for everyone on the internet. It's more useful than apps. And now I'm a cloud engineer. I still have a bill from AWS for $2 because I used a very large instance. And I wanted to say that I was so afraid of programming because I didn't know what it is at all. I haven't seen it for 5 years ago. And now it's my passion. And I want to inspire you. If you don't know something, just do it. You won't understand it. Even in 1 year, 2 years, you can still not understand, but you will do it and you will get it. And it will make you a lot happier. And thank you very much.
I think we all understand your horror stories. We've all gone through it in some way or another.
Thank you.
And okay, no, wait. How do I say your name?
Anastasia. Anastasia.
It wasn't terribly wrong, right? Sorry.
No, it was fine.
Okay, thank you so much. Up next we have Sandro. This name I can say. Yay me. Sandro, do you need to set up sound? Yes. Oh no. No sound. Alright, so okay, so you can set up. Because also I really enjoy this lightning talk because there were the math symbols, they really take me back to my university days. I had so much fun back then, you know. Now I have to pay taxes and stuff. Not so nice. Sandro, are you ready?
I don't know. Am I?
Unsupported signal, check your device outputs. That's what it says here.
Okay, let me see if I can connect here. Should be.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think.
No? Is it my PC?
I think no. I don't know. Fazem ideia do que está a passar? This is Portuguese, debugging in Portuguese.
Yes, much easier. Tenho aqui.
Pode ser isto.
Sim.
Para os Macs aquilo faz falta.
Pois, aqui o problema é que... Finally. Is it?
Tento outra vez.
Are we there yet? Deixa-me tentar. Isso já está, já devia ter passado.
Sim, mas nós temos aqui uma televisão. Enquanto
temos
chegar
aqui.
ali, não chega lá à frente.
Let me try extend. Did it extend? Did it extend?
Yeah.
Yes, it extends. It lives.
Não, vamos verificar aqui. É mais fácil nós para frente.
Sim, é para ali.
Okay, Sandro, the floor is yours.
Okay, let's talk about something completely different now. How many of you here are full stack or ever touched a front end? Okay, a lot. So let me give you a bit of a, only have 5 minutes, so it's just a brief insight into accessibility. I've been working with accessibility for about 10 years now. So let me just help you rethink the idea of accessibility in our apps, at least. So my name is Sandro. You can find me on LinkedIn, and you can ask me anything if you want to. So accessibility is about the diversity of abilities. So accessibility is not sometimes what we identify visually as a problem, is all sorts of things, including people that cannot hear, cognitive issues, speech impediments. So there's a lot of accessibility issues that we have to tackle. And you might think, now I don't have an issue or a problem, but you never know in the future if you will need. So there's an idea of making things as accessible as possible for everyone, including ourselves, because we will definitely get older, so we might need something in the future. So there's a thing called digital accessibility that has 4 principles, which is perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust. So these are the 4 principles that you have in accessibility that regulate the way that you should create web apps and every sorts of apps, but especially web apps, at least for me, are my biggest thing. So one of the things that regulates this are the UCAG rules. You can follow these rules in the W3C consortium, that you have all the rules there listed of what you have to be aware of when you're creating an application. But I will just give you an overview. So let's talk a bit about text. Headings are really important for primarily blind people. They use headings to guide themselves on your website, so it's important that all of your headings are listed correctly. And you shouldn't skip levels, so you shouldn't have an H1, H3, H2. They all should be in sequence. Only one H1 should exist, which is the title of the page. This is important. You might have more, but accessibility-wise, only one should exist per page. And they have to have a logical sequence. Links have to be recognizable. Don't do click here don't ever do click here because I cannot see. I don't know what here is. So be semantically correct with your links. It's the most important thing that you can take out of this presentation in terms of links. And also, if you need to, add a title to your link so you can have more context. And as I said, context is everything in accessibility, so semantics are really important. I know that we feel always compelled to put divs everywhere, but you have a lot of semantic tags in HTML that you can use, and you should use them because they are basically translated into screen readers. There's a bunch of landmarks that you have at your availability, so you can, when you are building your apps, so you can use them, and you should use them. A picture is worth 1,000 words. Images is exactly the same thing. If an image has context, then you should account for that context. Never put an image like, look at this graph. Okay, done. There's no graph for me. So you should have alt text. You should have an area described by where you can describe that image if it has some sort of major context. Context matters. So even if you have an SVG, you should have a description so you can help you. In that case, I have a title. I can give some context to my SVG because, again, I cannot see. And you also have area labels, area described by. You can always use these enrichment labels so you can help with your elements. And now I'll bring up the pace. Skip to content, really important. The first link on your page should be a skip to content. The skip to content should skip the navigation and go directly into the content of the page. This should be your first link, or else screen readers will repeat everything. So if you have 1,500 items in navigation, they will repeat every single one. So you should be able to skip directly into the content. Element visibility. If you hide an element with CSS, it's not even available for screen readers. So do something like this. So have a style that basically places the element out of your browser's rendering view, but the element is still available, okay? Hiding something, it's not a good decision if you want your site to be accessible. Screen reader text is exactly the same thing that I showed. It's basically a CSS rule that can hide text from your plain sight, but the text will still be available. Native controls, I always give this idea of, yes, I want something, I want an area to be clickable, so I have to put roll equals button, so it knows it's a button, and I have to put a tab index so I can tab to the button. You know what's better than this? Button, okay? Don't reinvent the wheel, it's not needed. Focus, don't remove focus. I know that visually it's much more cleaner to remove that focus style that the browsers give you. Don't remove focus. We have a bunch of people that navigate with a pointer because they don't have mobility and they need to understand what they are selecting. So focus should always be a priority. Keyboard shortcuts, exactly the same thing. If you can, if it's possible, it's always good to give people the ability to use keyboard shortcuts to navigate to sensible areas. And also, when we work with JavaScript, don't forget that if you are rendering a modal, if you are rendering a submenu, anything, you should inform the blind user that there's new information in your screen. So you can use ARIA Live for that. ARIA Live Polite would just say what's rendered inside of that element and won't repeat everything else. So testing and auditing is a thing that we should do a lot more of. I wish so. So you have a bunch of tools that you can use. Google Lighthouse is available in your browser, so you can use it to have at least an idea of how the accessibility in your site is. Axe is also a plugin that you can use. You can install it and run it, so it will immediately tell you a bunch of issues that you have in your site. And there's also DevTools accessibility. It's also present in Chrome, so you can use it to understand your accessibility tree inside your website. And then there's manual testing. This is called NVDA. It's basically a screen reader. It's what we use to test manually and to understand how what the screen reader text is saying to the user. So to have a comprehensive idea if the context is enough, or if it's too much, or if we have to fix something. Rocket Validator is an app that you can use. Okay. So if you have any questions, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Sandro. Sorry we had to clap you off stage, but we were a bit over time. Tiago, is it easy to set up? Is it going to be easy to set up?
Let me answer that question in 2 seconds.
Alrighty. 1, 2.
Should be. I plugged it in. Hey, wake up. It worked at lunchtime. Yeah, it's a Mac. I'm using the adapter. It worked at lunchtime. I came here and I plugged it in. It did work.
No, because it's...
They changed the adapters, everything is so confusing.
So please.
I've been trying to use more descriptive links on the things that I write, and I've gone from click here to whole sentences as a link. I don't think I've been able to strike the balance yet, but I'm working on it. Tiago, are you good to go?
Sure.
Alrighty.
Hi. I'm Tiago, and this is Drama. A point in time where the love story between the Python REPL and Vim is kind of shaky, okay? I've been using Vim and generally VI key bindings in every text editor, every command line utility, like the Python REPL, the Postgres client, REPL client, every shell I've been using since forever. My fingers do the cursor movement and editing automatically for me. So my mind says I need to change that, okay? My fingers do it. I don't need to think. But I understand this is a very acquired taste. And I love the Python REPL to test quick things really quickly. Like those smoke tests, if import works, I must be doing something right. So who here uses the Python REPL? Okay, a few of us, maybe 30, 40%. Who here prefers VI key bindings for things? Okay, there might be an intersection here. What's going on? And why is this love story, maybe, in a critical position nowadays? Now, the new Python 3.13 has a new REPL with a very nice capability that I'll try to demonstrate really quickly. Let me bring up 3.12 first, okay? And those of us who have used the REPL know that we can kind of go like this. I'll define a function, and so I'm going multi-line on the REPL, and when we return, 42, oh, I did it wrong. Now, this classical or legacy REPL, I can use history. I'm using the VI key movements here, escape, KK, and I get a line at a time, okay? And it's doable, and now I want the 41, I get to the end, okay, I want it 42, okay, I fix it. And this is manageable on the REPL, but I'm using VI key bindings to edit and search my REPL history. Now, let's move on to the future, or to the present. Python 13. Now I'll do the same exact thing. And this is a very nice feature of the new Python 3.13 REPL. F, go. It indented automatically. Nice, thank you. And return 41. Same mistake. Oh, I want to correct it. Now, up. And it gave me the full block. I like this. This is very useful, very practical. I correct it, go. And now F returns 42. What's the problem in this romance, okay, is that this new REPL does not understand VI key bindings, okay? So I can't do all the escape, words, movements, search for the last thing that I typed that had an E, whatever, okay? When I found out this, I opened a GitHub issue in the first alpha that shipped with the new REPL. And the new REPL is actually very powerful because it's mostly written in Python and very customizable, okay? We can do all sorts of tricks. I don't have the time for that now, but it's actually very interesting. Now, back then, I opened the GitHub issue wondering, you see, the new REPL, blah, 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 VI editing mode. Could this be a bug? I'm willing to assist, I'm willing to help, test, and maybe contribute. And this is the response I got a few days later. So the new REPL, blah, 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 there won't be a VI editing mode. Use the blah, 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 so you can use the legacy REPL, which will do VI key bindings, but it won't do the nice new things like history up and get the full line or multi-line thing. So this is more of a call to action, or if there's anyone interested in addressing this, I might be interested in trying to explore a solution to this going forward, okay? There are a few people sad, I suppose, here. So if you're interested, let's do something about it. If you want to do something about it, even better. Okay, so it's just a quick shout out. The new REPL is very useful, very powerful, but it kind of breaks a few Unix integration traditions, and this is kind of all I have to say. I think the love story between Vim and the Python REPL is kind of shaky nowadays. I'm sure it will improve in the future. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Tiago. I'm sorry you're heartbroken. Can we have Lucas on stage now? For the new REPL, which is written in Python and which makes it easier for Python people to contribute to Python itself, if you want to see how the REPL actually works, you can go to, feel free to set up.
What was the problem with Mac?
There's no problem. For you, there shouldn't be a problem.
Right.
Go on YouTube and search for an EuroPython 2024 talk given by Lucas Lange, where Lucas does some live music and some live changing. So Lucas is programming the REPL. Sorry, I thought they were talking to me. Look, it's not important. He'll be done in a minute. What I'm saying is really important. You go on YouTube and you look up Lucas Lange, EuroPython 2024. It's going to be an amazing talk. You'll enjoy it.
Okay.
And now this one. Yeah, he's customizing the REPL as he goes. It's insane. All right, Lucas, are you ready?
Still setting up.
Still setting up what, the timer?
Still setting up. Yep, and the timer.
No, I have the timer. Your timer means nothing here. Alrighty.
Okay.
Go ahead. Good luck.
All right. Hi everyone. My name is Lucas, and I wanted to say that this is actually my first time doing this. So. Coming up here on stage, and my talk is precisely about that, about being here in front of all of you and coming up here on stage. And it all started when I went to DjangoCon earlier this year. Here you can find me, all the pictures of me stuffing my face, and I swear I have more than one shirt. So since then, also it was organized by this same team, so shout out to them. But since then, I've had the desire to come up here on stage and do a talk. So I must say that I really do admire all of you who just can easily come up here and just talk, because that's all it is. It's just talking, really. Yet my brain doesn't think like that, and to me this is terrifying. But here I am. It's terrifying, but it's exciting. So it's a barrier, and I think we can all agree that it's important to break these barriers. So I had this idea in mind, so I started thinking about this idea of doing a talk. So I started writing all of the ideas that would occasionally come up to me, and in that process, I never really had an idea that I really liked. That is, until I stumbled into this book, Writing an Interpreter in Go by Thorsten Ball. I didn't think much of it initially. I just thought that it would be a fun side project for me. I was curious about interpreters and how they work. So I had this brilliant idea. Python is an interpreted language, and Pycon is coming right around the corner. So I write an interpreter for Python and present it at a talk, but give it a twist just to make it different, make it fun. So maybe put braces or instead of indents, something like that. But I still wasn't satisfied. Of course not. I wanted to challenge myself, and I didn't want to just copy snippets from the book. So I decided I would write it in Zig. Why not? One of the supposed successors to C. Yeah, so no reason whatsoever. Just curious about the language. And how far did I get? I did about 10% of the project. Yeah, that was about 10%. Who would have guessed that building something that I don't know how it works in a language that is not very mature and doesn't have the strongest documentation for that reason, which I also don't know how it works, written in a language that I only have a general knowledge of, Golang, would come out wrong. I'm in shock. I don't know how this happened. And those 10% alone, they were a very humbling experience. I thought I knew memory. I wrote some C programs when I was in university 4 or 5 years ago. So this should be easy. Well, my terminal disagrees. Yeah, so in conclusion, I guess I failed. So I wanted to present this project with a fun twist. Here, do a lightning talk, but did I really fail? I'm up here. It's not what I intended initially, but yeah, I'm here. So the message is just enjoy yourselves and do that thing you want to do. And yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lucas. Luis, go ahead and set up. It's always good to see first-time speakers up on stage. Remember that luck is not 100% random, so coming up on stage and giving your first talk, even if it's just to show your terminal all garbled up, it's not just to show the terminal all garbled up, it's to do your first talk. So it's a bit late this year, but next year we want to see pages and pages and pages filled up with your names and your ideas to show the things that you do, that you learned. Essentially, that's just it. Luis, the stage is yours.
Thank you. So, last lightning talk of the last day of talks. So you are the warriors waiting for the party, and but I have something to talk to you. So I'll be doing some show of hands exercises. So let's do a test run. By show of hands, who has a hand to show? Okay, great. It'll work. Great. So, as I said, last lightning talk in the last day of talks. Do you know Zaza Gabor? Okay, no. She was an Hungarian-American socialite and actress. She married 9 times. And right now I'm feeling like the 9th husband in her wedding night. I know what I have to do, I just don't know how to do it differently. So, but let's go. I'll be talking about Pyconing. As show hands, everybody who has heard about this word, Pyconing? Oh, great, I just invented it. I was so afraid that I was copying somebody. Okay, so this is the activity of participating in PyCon, either attending or volunteering or organizing. Now, the thing that I'm talking about is just because we need help in organizing. Why? I remember the Declaration of Independence, we the people, the government, by the people, for the people. PyCon is the same. It's a community, and these organizations are by the community, for the community, and we really need your help. How? Well, organizing a PyCon is not that difficult. It has some moving parts, but it's feasible. It's a pretty basic process to streamline. We need a team, a location, communications, sponsors, content, probably some other things, but this is the basic. So, team. Well, it really needs a team. It's a teamwork. the team has to have a core team. That's the steering committee. It must be a small group of people, super connected, that need to make fast decisions. For instance, we don't do this for a living. We've been organizing some tech events for some years, but this is not our business. We have organized DjangoCon Europe 20, 21, 22, 24, and we'll be organizing 25 in Ireland. You're invited for the Django crew over here. Django's? Okay, great. Dublin, okay. So, and Pycon Portugal, 22, 23, 24, and we need help for the 25th. The core team is basically 3 people. You know them, David, Miguel, and Frederico. They manage to make all the decisions very quickly. And then we have some other people around with other roles and volunteers, which is something that it's very, very, very needed. Now, another thing that is very important is location. We have the principle of one city per year, and the location and the venue and the dates are interconnected. We have been in places where we have support from the municipalities that gave us access to some places in certain time frames. So this is very important. Next, comms, website, social media, Slack, I forgot this. Sponsors, it's an issue. The main thing is to get the onboarding of these institutions, because we need their support for communications and for money for grants to help people come that otherwise would not come if they didn't have help. And then some companies like the Pydantic and Encoder, for instance, which we are very appreciative to help us. And then we need that money to combine with the entrances, we can put everything in place. Then content. Well, we have a process really streamlined, so it's very easy. Call for proposals. We need your help, the community, to be the jury for evaluating proposals. And we really need you. That's the call for action, that we need you for 2025. Volunteer, come up working with us, and who knows, perhaps sometime you can have your own Pycon Portugal edition. So we'll be back. Thank you.
Thank you, Luís. And now to close off the day, the last thing before the party, some final words by our Pyconing people. It's already catching up, the word.
Okay, so this is the last session of the day. I know you're all eager to go to the party, so I'll try to be quick. Luis stole this slide from me, so I guess I'll move on. Again, Luis did all the job. Okay, so the running numbers from this conference. We had a total of 168 individual attendees, and this includes people that come only for a single day or 2 days. And these attendees, they come from 20 countries. Not the 5 continents, but the 4 continents. I'll show the map in a bit. And for the first time ever, we have a majority of Portuguese attendees. And that's really cool, because we started it with a big majority of foreigners coming to PyCon in Porto, the first one. So it's really good to see the Portuguese community showing up and growing here. And moving on, we had a total of 5K in grants that reached over 20 people, and this was distributed along speakers, volunteers, and also participants. In terms of speakers, we had over 120 submissions, so it was a lot of work from our volunteers to go through all of them and rank them and select the best content for this conference. And out of these submissions, this resulted in 2 keynotes, 14 talks, 6 workshops, 11 lightning talks at the time that we made the slides, and 24 speakers. And yeah, so here's the map with all the Pycon Portugal participants from this edition. And yeah, it's very good to see that we are everywhere. If you know someone from Australia, please invite them. And yeah, moving on, the code of conduct. So far we have 0 incidents, and let's try to keep it that way. Again, if you have any issue, you can reach us over email. Here is the email, and it's also on the website. You can still grab your t-shirt. If we don't have the t-shirt available here, we'll ship it to you. But you can buy it from the same place that you bought your ticket. You'll have a section for the t-shirt there. And before moving on to the next slide, I would like to invite all the volunteers that helped take part in this, making this possible, to come on to the stage. And that also includes the people that were hosting the sessions, so Tiago and Rodrigo. And also, we have Afonso outside. He's taking care of the party, so you can thank him in person in a bit. And also Julius, who couldn't make it due to some visa issues. So yeah, so thank you all for the help. Now a big round of applause to everyone that makes it possible. So yeah, I said I was going to be quick. You can follow us on social media. And a big thank you to our sponsors. Again, without them, this wouldn't be possible. So you have Pydantic, Zencoder, EuroPython Society, the Python Software Foundation, the Django Software Foundation, the Municipality of Braga for providing us with this venue, and Evolutio. Thank you all. Okay, and let's go outside.
We won't know. There will be next year.
No, not yet.
Okay.
Oh, and the speakers, please stop on the way out on our check-in desk. We have a little something for you. Cool. Thanks.
Just a reminder for those of you who are coming by car, tomorrow parking space will be a bit crowded with another event. So they are parking all around the